Hello and welcome to Conversations in Clean Tech, the podcast that celebrates the clean tech industry and the people that power it, brought to you by Brightsmith. For our 7th season, we're speaking to clean tech leaders about the process of investing in a cleaner planet. From inspiring stories and words of wisdom to financial forecast and investment insights, you can learn all about the people and companies who are driving these investments and propelling us towards a cleaner, greener tomorrow. I'm your regular host, Jenny Gladman, but this season there's a twist. I'll be taking a few months off to have my second baby, so I'm handing the reins of our podcast over to a series of fellow Brightsmithers who will be Season 7's super co-hosts. So, without further hesitation,
Hi, this is Carmen Davis, and I am one of the co-hosts of Conversations in Clean Tech and one of Brightsmith's ever-growing hydrogen team. So today, please join us as we delve into the journey of Roxana Beck Mohammadi, an incredible figure in both policy for clean hydrogen initiatives as well as an advocate for growing businesses within the sector, enabling progress for the energy transition. Roxana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I love being here. It's so good to chat with you.
Me too. Very excited. So, I'd love to start with just hearing a little bit more about your career journey from starting out as a technical fuel cell engineer to being one of the top voices in hydrogen legislation.
Thank you so much. It has been quite the journey, but it has been a really long journey. It's been 14 years, and that journey started with an intention. And the original intention started when I was 15 years old and knew that I wanted to be an environmental steward. And I knew that my medium essentially would be politics. And it was a calling. And even hydrogen has been a calling of mine. And a lot of the work that I do has been influenced a lot by my intuition and reading patterns and understanding how essentially I can be of service to this world. And that is my highest aspiration and really the most fulfilling thing for me. And I realized when I was 17 that I needed to be actually an engineer. And so totally wasn't into the sciences, was in the humanities only, and became an engineer. So I could tell politicians that, hey, the technologies are viable and we can have more stringent regulations and legislation, but there is quite a balance to that in itself. I was a chemical engineer at UCLA. In my senior year, I was looking for into, some sort of laboratory that was green, essentially doing something for the environment. And I ran into a couple of guys at a green cocktail party in Los Angeles, and those guys were researchers at the National Fuel Cell Research Center at UC Irvine. And I had finally given up on going to grad school at that point. And it was like April. And I got into that lab within a month or two and then started by June. So I really think it was fate for me to enter the hydrogen industry. And since then, I've been advocating for it. So understood the technical aspects of it, right? Being an engineer and studying it in grad school. And then I was able to then go to my dream job since I was 15, right after grad school, which was to go work for the California EPA and within the California EPA Resources Board. So, that really kicked me a great love affair with hydrogen and hydrogen policy and executing in that arena, and what would become my job now, which is to be essentially in the thick of it, in the middle of it, being someone that's helping not only the industry get organized and the industry communicating well, but also with policymakers. And so really, kind of being a hub in itself and being the collaborator. And I've actually kind of taken pride in not working ever for a specific company, because I think I'm better off in the position I'm in because I think that I can help everyone and look at things from a systems level and apply that in even politics. And what we do at the U.S. Hydrogen Alliance, which is systems architecting hydrogen policy as well as hydrogen deployment across the U.S. So it's always been connected, and yeah, it's been such a fulfilling life journey, actually, and I really look forward to the rest of the work that I can do. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that piece because, yeah, wow, what a journey. I love what you said in the very beginning of when you started talking about your journey that you knew you wanted to be an environmental steward. Tell us a little bit more about what that means to you and how you kind of knew that feeling.
I always have to quote Billie Holiday on this one.
Oh, I
When
love
love
it.
comes, I know, when love comes, nothing can be done. And so that's how it began. Other than that, before that, I thought I was going to go into international diplomacy and DIA or something, but it was a calling. It's been interesting to see how this has evolved, but energy is as important as air and water and money, and energy is so critical to our existence as a human race, and how we navigate around it and how we optimize around it is really critical. And I didn't know that it would be energy. I thought maybe it could be, sustainable materials or something that would be in the circular economy or something like that. But this is how it's transpired. But I think that it's actually really heartbreaking for me when environmentalists come after hydrogen and they're like, it's not clean enough. And I'm like, it can be actually. And not only we are mitigating emissions from certain sectors that you can't mitigate emissions from ever, if you really want to walk away from petroleum fuels. So an environmental steward, we should all be environmental stewards. This is the earth that we have acquired, and we need to take care of it just like we would take care of anything else that is in our lives. And we should take care of it with great grace, love, admiration, and respect. And I think that we fight a lot in the energy sector about what is clean enough, what is respectful enough, maybe. And I go, like, there's a role for everything. There's a reason why hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. There's something about that. There's something special about it. It's the first element. It does have a role to play, and we really need to, if we really want to be environmental. The greatest genius is in the environment. We mimic it. We need to mimic nature, because that is of genius. And we are equally put together in a genius manner too.
Amen. I completely agree. That's
Amen.
really, I know. So, that kind of brings me back to another question I had when you were talking about, that transition from, understanding really the technical side and really kind of deepening your understanding around hydrogen and then moving into policy and being an advocate. How do you navigate that balance between advocating for hydrogen technology while still cautioning about the challenges within the deployment?
It's a dance. It's a nuanced dance. And it's one that you have to go about consciously, respectfully. And I have a little bit of sass and I like to joke around a little bit. So maybe
Same.
like that's yeah, so maybe that's not always the greatest dance move of all time, but ultimately, yeah, moving with grace, understanding that, look, everyone has a different gun to their head. And so if you're an environmental agency, let's say like where I was at the California Air Resources Board, your number one mandate, your job was to regulate air quality. That is your job. If you're a corporation, and you're a public corporation especially, your number one, the gun to your head is your shareholders. And when we become cognizant of what everyone they're striving to do, respect and understand the perspective, then you can actually now from a place of real negotiation diplomacy. And there's not only just advocacy that's external to the hydrogen industry, but there's even advocacy within the hydrogen industry. And I hope that I can, and I'm working on it, to properly advocate within the industry to become much more cohesive
Yeah.
as an industry, and hash out our differences internally so that we can be a better reflection externally and be better advocates for ourselves externally, and then be even better at working with those that are in opposition to us and educating those folks, educating policymakers, and really it's about tying back to what everyone ultimately wants. And I think we're all striving for, and I've mentioned this publicly to environmental, advocates that look at us and they're like, you're part of big oil, you're part of the evil empire, you're allowing the continuity of fossil fuels. And they're kind of missing the point that a lot of the people in this industry really care about the environment, and that we really do want to make a positive impact. And so the question is always how. And that's the difficulty, is how to come to a common approach to the how. And so it's difficult. It's a dance. And I think that there's a lot of different ways you can get there, guns blazing, pitchforks up, all of the above. And then there's the loving and compassionate way of going about it. And I have to say, there's actually a time and place for all of that. And we have a great fight in front of us. And I will tell you right now, as a hydrogen advocate, I'm extremely concerned that we are about to lose the war. And it's that much more important for us to get much more sophisticated in our advocacy approach. But I think that first, there is a level of sophistication and coming to grips within the industry in order for us to display better externally, because I feel like as an industry, we've gotten gold in our hands so many times over the last couple of decades, and it slipped through our fingers. And there's something to be said about that.
Wow.
So
I think that's a lot to reflect on.
Sword and heart.
So true.
Yeah. Running into battle with a sword, but with an open, brave heart, and being courageous. It's all of the above.
Amen to that as well. Yeah. Wow. No, it's so true. I mean, obviously, I'm earlier on in my career, but even the folks that I speak to, a lot of them, are founders or co-founders of businesses that have seen the waves of hydrogen go through many times, and I think they know that something's different this time, and there's higher stakes involved on all regards. And that piece about cohesion, I think, is a really important thing. I love that you mentioned that, because there is a lot going on, to say the least. And so that overarching kind of how we are going to present this industry, this sector, to those who might understand it and might not, is important. And we're really going to have to get ourselves together on how we approach that in the best way. But obviously, I know that you're doing a ton of that over at United States Hydrogen Alliance. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how that came to be. And can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what you all are doing over there?
I mean, it really all starts with love.
Yeah. Wow.
And hydrogen's my first love. I'm very dedicated to it. Sometimes I get angry. I'm like, I want to divorce this damn guy. Because it's so hard.
I hear you.
It's so hard, but I love it so much. And that formed, the United States Hydrogen Alliance, is first formed as the Western States Hydrogen Alliance. There's two pieces here. One, which was, I like to say that I was born and raised in the hydrogen community in California, and so saw a lot of things in the state of California, how hydrogen has deployed in California, the policies that supported that, and in the name of love, and anything, let's say it's a child, you want the best for your child. You want your child to strive for absolutely everything. You want it to have that self-esteem to say, I am worthy of X, Y, Z. And I feel like that's been my job in this industry. And in California, in 2018, I started a hydrogen lobbying firm. And I was saying, we need to ask for more. We cannot settle for crumbs. We are only, as an industry, really responding most of the time to regulatory proceedings or solicitations, but that's the end of the road. That's the end of the political road. The beginning, the inception point in the political world is really and pathway is legislation. And so we need to run more legislation. We need to give policymakers something to understand and vote on and make a conscious decision about, instead of like having these meetings and be like, hey, get to know hydrogen, and them going like, oh, okay, it's cool, but they're not making any decisions around it. So I had a number of clients. We ran legislation in California, and it was incremental. It was essentially through that process, we realized that we really needed to get the narrative right in other states and create additional marketplaces. That California was great, but we needed more. And we needed to take lessons learned from California into the other states. So we started the Western States Hydrogen Alliance. And so we were in 14 states, and then we expanded nationally in 2021 at the December 2021, after about less than a month after Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law got signed. And the hydrogen hubs were coming, so we knew we had to go into the other states. But did I know around probably, yeah, right when I started working for the state, and I was, I kind of grew up in the hydrogen trade associations, and I was watching a particular female leader, Catherine Dunwoody, shout out to you, leading a particular hydrogen fuel cell association. And I was like, I think I could play that role. I think I would like to play that role. And I have no idea that, 10 years later, whatever it was, I think it was 10 years later. Yeah, a little less than 10 years later, 8 years later, I would play that role. And it's a role that I've enjoyed, and people have tried to recruit me. And I go like, no, because I need to serve you guys. Who's gonna play the systems architect role? Who wants my job? I don't know that many people don't want my job. If I didn't have this immense love for hydrogen, it would be very hard to stay in my role. It would be extremely hard. It is not fun. But I make it fun. I make it fun. I do. I need to see my child grow up. I want it to live its full potential. The world deserves to see hydrogen live out its full potential, because it serves so many different industries. It can decarbonize like no one else's business in certain sectors. It is part of the transition, and it is part of the energy resilience that we need. So I have to see hydrogen succeed, because it is really a gift to humanity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I love that you mentioned the inspiration you had from Catherine a couple of years ago. I think obviously role models, mentors, people that you aspire to in your career are so pivotal. Can you tell us a little bit more about how, role models or mentors have been, especially female leaders, have been, important to your own career journey?
I have been very thankful for the mentors that have come into my life, and they have seen the potential in me when I certainly didn't understand. And I think it has been very hard being a person, especially when I was younger, being as passionate as I am, being as determined as I am, and asking for more and wanting more. It certainly didn't do well all the time with the establishment. And in many ways, it was naive. I'm in my 20s. I'm going to be super naive about it. Even now in my 30s. Late 30s, you guys. I'm still, I'm surely there's some aspects of me that is naive, but there's other aspects of me that I know has inspired others. Mentors have come in many shapes and forms. And even now, there are people even on my board that help support me and help mentor me. And, I think I've been almost inspired by what people see in me, because it's been sometimes hard because of the rejection. It's hard to be the rebel. It really is. And it's constant rejection over and over. And especially when you're constantly trying to do things you're trying to pave a new pathway. Going into the Western states, it was like the Wild West. It's being a pioneer, it's blazing a path, and people can be skeptical, right? And it's like even technology adoption. There's early adopters that get it, and then there's those that are skeptical and don't get it, but will be later adopters, But I will say that there have been some women that have been great, and I've also had a lot of that rejection. And so I really strive to be a mentor that I never had to those. I have fellows in a fellowship class, and employees I'm their first job out of college, and I want to give them the environment that I didn't exactly have, which was go wild. Go, you don't know what you are until you have been into the wild ocean, and you need to learn how to swim, and you find out just so many amazing things about your capacity that you wouldn't know if you were told constantly, know your place, know your place, know your place. How dare you? I say, I want you to dare, because if you dare, then you are now a role models for others. So every time that I, dress in my wildly colorful clothes and I'm walking around in my weird the heels with jewels on them, and I'm all over the place like that, and people are like, what is she doing? I'm going like, I'm daring you to also be great, be in your greatness, because the world needs to see that greatness. They need to be inspired, because so many of us are so repressed. And I don't want people to feel as much pain as I've felt going through what I've gone through.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think that there's so many people that need to hear that, even in leadership right now, that, have to become cycle breakers often, like you're talking about. We haven't all just entered the workforce and had everything handed to us and all the mentors that, build us up the whole way. We've learned a lot, and obviously you've learned a lot. And it's incredible to see you pave the way for others in that same way. It's really powerful. So maybe we can dig into a little bit more about how you perceive the hydrogen market and landscape right now. Obviously, we are in a very interesting time in the year, very interesting year, election year. Obviously, lots of things going on with the IRA and the pillars for hydrogen. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you think is going on right now.
Yes, we are at an immensely impactful, pivotal time in the industry. I don't know how much background I should give about 45V, but I'll go really
Go
quick.
for it. We have a lot of folks that, don't know too much about hydrogen or new listeners. So feel free to give a little spiel.
Okay, let me tell you this story about the Biden administration. So we were just so thrilled as an industry to see $9.5 billion given to hydrogen, to build out these hydrogen hubs and to advance technology, in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so in 2021, we're like, oh my God, this is happening. And with with Democrats, and hydrogen has had its different supporters, and it really is bipartisan, but it was just great to see that. It was great to see the Biden administration looking at energy from holistically, and I was like, oh my God, this is kind of really cool. And it's the I remember I actually had turned down a job at Department of Energy, I don't know, whatever, 10 years ago, because I was like, no, all the actions here in California, like I would always be looking westward. So it was kind of cool to see the feds actually really do something. Then fast forward just 9 months later, August of 2022, we had the Inflation Reduction Act, and we had another $13 billion that was allocated toward hydrogen explicitly, and that was just explicit, allocation. And so we had what was within the IRA, within the law, there's a particular code section 45V, which was the hydrogen production tax credit. Like, holy smokes, that's a lot. 22.5 billion in 9 months. We're doing something right now. Here's what's going on though in the global landscape at the same time, is that there's hydrogen is becoming understood as an important energy source in different energy economies and portfolios. So we have 130 countries globally, 130 plus, that have national hydrogen strategies or some kinds, some sort of announcement. And so we're actually behind in the US at that point. At that exact moment in time, we are behind. And we were wondering, like, are we going to catch up? Are we going to be able to leapfrog? And we're like, oh my God, we are. All of a sudden, there's lots of companies and investment dollars that are coming to the US saying, like, oh no, like, we're now diverting these from different places like Europe and bringing it into the US. So what has happened recently though? So, okay, we're going from a high to now a low. And the low occurred December 26th of 2023. So the greatest the greatest Christmas gift you could ever give, is saying that, oh wait, no, we're not just going to base, our credit system off of carbon intensity, which was kind of a national standard and something that we can leverage that exists, via the GREET model, which is, it's a life cycle assessment tool. No, we're going to add these, what are called the three pillars. We're going to add additional standards that are actually double standards. And so we're doing this supposedly to make sure that the hydrogen is more clean, or is it really political sabotage?
Yeah,
and
that's the question.
So it is quite the question. And so, we have now billions of dollars on the table that are going to be unrealized. And there's actual macroeconomic and geopolitical ramifications to this switch. And so the hydrogen industry, for the first time in a couple of years, is now at a complete standstill. And we're wondering what is going to happen, because financial investments are basically not going to go through with the kinds of requirements now set by these three pillars. So now investors are leaving the country. And the question is, when will these investors be tempted to come back into the fold? Because we need private capital too. We need private capital. We need public, driving forces. And it's now becoming a situation where we're not just missing the mark, we're even sabotaging not only the IRA, but the hydrogen hubs that came out of the BIL. So, and the hydrogen hubs now are stalled in their contracting with the federal government, because a lot of the folks were doing their economic models based off this IRA incentive. It came 9 months after. So the current landscape right now is at a halt. And that is probably, when you're in freeze mode, that's one of the most dangerous places you can be. So my job is really to, I think that we'll see what happens on the federal level, but I see it as my job to explain to people that we must pivot, that we must be creative, that we need other ways of going about this. I've passed a hydrogen production tax credit statewide, like in 2021. We may need to do that in multiple states. We need to continue to find ways to systems architect to pivot, because if we're not creative about it, how many people are we going to be laying off? How much economic revenue is not going into the economy, both globally and even locally? So we have to get creative. And this is, I really kind of had said before this year had started, this would be the great dark night of the soul for the industry. And I still think that's the case. And that is exactly at the moment in time we're at right now, which is, who are we going to become? Where are the deficiencies in our industry? What can we do to remedy them? How do we get more creative about how to be more resourceful? So the best thing that we can do is learn.
I completely agree. And it's funny because we say this all the time in recruitment, but it's true on a larger landscapes as well. But time kills deals, and you really
100%.
have to just be so agile, especially within this market. But like you said, being creative, thinking about ways to come together to make some of the big things move before they want to. So yeah, it's a really pivotal
We have
time.
to. It's our destiny.
It totally is.
We have to make decisions.
Yeah, completely. I wanted to touch a little bit on Manacor Partners and your advocacy there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Those companies are actually they're dead at this point, and I'm now on my third consulting company that isn't actually public, but it's called Indivisible as One. And yeah, it's been, I will say it's been quite, I kind of resisted the hat of CEO for a long time, because I was like, oh, I'm an engineer, oh, now I'm a lobbyist, oh, another hat, like, I don't know. But these companies are just here to serve. So, it's the consulting firm that helps support, the management of the United States Hydrogen Alliance. And there's a reason why it's called Indivisible as One. That is really the only way that we will be successful as, let's call it, particularly to advance and really ultimately it is for humanity. It's for us as a singular entity.
I know you touched upon it there, but also, you mentioned when you were talking about the landscape, how this is affecting workforce development. And yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more on your opinion about addressing some of the challenges, particularly in regions where hydrogen will be most relevant. Where do you kind of see the hydrogen industry playing a role in job creation and economic growth and workforce development?
Yeah, so one thing that I kind of agree with from a terminology perspective is not just like an energy transition, but there's energy expansion. And I just think anything nowadays in I actually, so as a chemical engineer, that really is traditionally petroleum engineering. We're now with solar and fuel cells or batteries or wind or whatever else, it's multifaceted engineering essentially, and it takes a lot of different disciplines to manage the electronics, high voltage, electrochemistry, gaseous properties. There's so many different aspects to this, right? Material science, et cetera, et cetera. I think that first of all, it really depends, right? Depending on the industry, there are certain job types that would be great, that would be fungible. The skills are fungible for our industry. So, anyone operating in the traditional industry could easily transition. Of course, there's different pieces there. There's a few pieces that need to be, augmented. Anybody that's in LNG or even ethanol, I feel like really a lot of the different industries, batteries industry, transportation industry, there's so many fungible skill sets that can fit within the hydrogen industry because we touch so many different sectors. But there's a great potential to bring in two things that this country needs more of: engineers and technicians. And I think that this country is going to not be able to maintain its in the world if it does not continue to cultivate ingenuity. And part of that ingenuity includes STEM. We need to invest in our education system. And then there's folks on the technical side that, I mean, to be frank, this might be a little controversial, but I think that we need to go into four-year schools 100%, but there are plenty of jobs that, and the kind of debt that we're seeing, the kind of economic uncertainty in this post-COVID world, a four-year might not be necessary at all. If anything, the trades might be a great opportunity and honestly higher paying and more stable. And we need those technicians too. And again, it doesn't really even matter what sector you're in. I still feel like, I don't know, after COVID, like part of the workforce went into a black hole nobody knows about. Talk to politicians about it. Like trying to figure out like where do they go and how do we bring back? And they can't all be Instagram influencers. Where are they? Like and some people have chosen happiness over material sustenance in some respects. And so there is another caveat to this, is that people are more conscientious. They're in some ways in less survival, and they want to make an impact on the world. And hydrogen can give them a promising career. And part of the work that, some of the things that we've talked about, Carmen, is not just bringing people into this industry, but it's retaining them. How do we keep them? And every time we have this economic uncertainty, we and companies have to lay off people. Do we lose these people forever from the hydrogen industry? And so, yes, there's fungible skills, but then we have to add specialized skills to that skill set. So there's a lot of opportunity, but it's our job as industry leaders and those companies that are striving to hire and build in the U.S. to make sure that we do everything that we can in our power to create a healthy U.S. hydrogen economy. Because otherwise, everybody is going through this like back and forth, and it's emotionally exhausting. I don't know how many people have the love and endurance that I do, because it's not easy, and even for me, it's trying.
It really is, and it's so. All of the things that you said resonate so much with what I've seen in the industry as well. It's funny when I call a candidate and they're in oil and gas or pharmaceuticals or something like that, and I'm like, I have a hydrogen clean tech opportunity for you. And they're like, who, me? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, like, listen to all the things that, ways that your skills are so transferable. And every time that, they start to hear more about the companies, more about what they're doing, a little bit more about hydrogen, because lots of people just generally don't know, they're always so impressed with the idea of being in mission driven work, especially when you've been in, chemical processing your whole life, or oil and gas, or whatever it might be. And I think it gives people a new, like, lease on career life. And, it really kind of begs to understand a little bit more about what they want, in their own lives, and how they're making an impact on the world. And so, that's always beautiful to see. But like you said, especially in retaining, folks within the industry, I think, renewables has seen kind of their first hits of layoffs this year. And we've started to see it a little bit as well with the hydrogen world. And yeah, I think it's important for folks like me, folks like Brightsmith, and like you said, industry leaders, to continue to keep these folks insular, and make sure they know that there's so many different avenues and so many different companies that are doing incredible work, that are on their way, and it is hard work. It is a risk. There's definitely a lot to take in on that regard, but if you're willing to do it and you're passionate, this life's short. You got to do what you can, and see what sticks. But yeah, it's a really incredible thing to see, and it's very important, for us as individuals within the industry already, to be thinking about and being aware of.
I love that you're doing that. So thank you for doing that. And is their mind blown when they're like, oh my God, like I can do a lot of this
Yes.
stuff? Like, are they surprised? It's so similar. But we're already, we're already in it, oil and gas, technically, because it's hydrogen that desulfurized our crude oil, which is why we don't have acid rain anymore. So hey, environmentalists, we've been doing God's
See?
work here. We've been helping the environment. Did you know? We should just let you know. But no, that's so cool. And okay, so I have a question for
Of
you.
course.
Do they, when you talk to them about joining the hydrogen industry, do they ever ask about the level of uncertainty
Oh,
in
yes.
the
Oh,
industry?
yes. Absolutely. I think that that's a huge piece for people, because obviously career moves are your life. It's your, salary, it's the way you live, it's what you're doing day to day. And so, especially when I'm talking to more senior folks, that, I was doing like an off-take position, recently, and I was talking to a lot of, senior off-take people who had worked in, adjacent industries. And that was their big question, it's like, yeah, I can see how it works. I understand, but who's buying it? How are we going to commit folks to, the higher premium price that it might be, or what that's going to look like with their carbon credits and all these different things? And so I think it does take a leap of faith. There is an element of trust, and just saying, hey, I see the vision, I'm going to commit to it. And then also, us as folks already in the industry, being those advocates and helping folks see, hey, this is here, it's around to stay, and we're going to do some really incredible work. So yeah, I think it's a balance. You have to be a little crazy, like good crazy, I think.
Aw. Yeah.
No, I love
Well,
that.
I mean, I can't blame people, right? Like if you have a family and there's economic uncertainty and you're already in a very economically uncertain time, how can you really tell them to take the leap, right? I mean, they have to obviously, right? But it's like it's not an easy one.
It's all about, like you said, it starts with kind of love, and it starts with seeing that your career might have an impact that you never knew it might. I see that even with me coming into the sector. I was at a Fortune 500 company before this, and I really enjoyed it. But, this was an opportunity to be mission driven in my work, and then also, take risks. And if that's what you enjoy, and you're up for the game, then come over to hydrogen. If not, maybe that's not your spot. But that's
We'll
okay.
take you later, though. We'll
Exactly.
take you later, okay?
Once we're
Yeah.
2030, let's talk again. But good. I
I
will
hope it's sooner than that.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully sooner. Yeah, hopefully sooner. But yeah, maybe we can just go into some aspiring words or any advice you might give to individuals that are contemplating, getting into this industry or, maybe staying in this industry if they're a little bit worried about the current situation. Yeah, what are your words for them?
One, we need you. Two, follow your intuition on it. Whatever is supposed to be, do it. Three, there is a family and community. If you don't have a family or community in this industry, just call me, come to us. Like we're really building community is so important for me because if you build that community, you help people be more resilient because that's how we survive the tough times. And know that you're making a difference, you're contributing to the greater whole, and that there are tough times. And there's also high highs and we're going to go through it all and we can go through it all together and really give grace. Any CEO in the industry, I mean anybody in the industry, especially in C-suite though, like they're dealing with a lot. And it's like we are in choppy waters, and the best thing you can do is not try to swim but to actually float. You can float, and that's how you're going to survive the tsunami and have faith. And I think with those things, like they're not, they're not, I don't even know if it's like great pieces of advice, but if you can fundamentally hold on to those things, you can get through pretty much anything.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, wow, that was a great conversation, Roxana. We really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. And yeah, I hope that you have a great rest of your day and our folks at home enjoyed. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you.